Hey everybody. Tomorrow's exam is going to be set up the exact same way the first exam was set up. I actually gave more multiple choice questions. So instead of five like we did during the midterm, you're going to get 10. They will be worth 3 points each. Short answer definitions, 2 points each. Then you'll have 10 multiple choice questions, 3 point each. And given the fact that uh, a lot of people had some difficulty getting at least two, maybe three essays done. You'll choose 2 out of 5 essays, and they're each worth 25 points. So the essays are still worth the majority of the exam's points, but I want you to focus mostly on the essays. Write as much as you can. Give it at least an attempt. If you don't attempt it, I can't really do anything. There's nothing to extrapolate in terms of points, right? We know how the grading is done. It's on given the amount of you write, how much you do answer, right? You can get 20 out of 25. You can get 10 out of 25. But if you write nothing and then are surprised that you fail, you I don't know how to make it even more clear. If you don't write the essays or you just write one essay, right? The highest you can get then is a 75. So the majority of your test, half of the exam points come from the essay. So make sure you write at least two. All right, I'm asking for two. If you want to answer three for a little bit of extra credit or just to get more writing down, do it. There'll be 10 this time, multiple choice questions. 10 multiple choice, 10 short definition answers. Those will be worth 2 points, but the multiple choice questions will be worth 3. Now, for essays, there will be one on the progressive era, right? What were the goals of the progressive era? What happened during the Gilded Age, the four izations, urbanization, urbanization, immigration, uh, industrialization and immigration. What happened during the Gilded Age and how did the progressives try to correct that? So this was a question, I believe, on the first exam, but nobody really answered it, so I'm asking it again. Industrialization led to an increase in jobs, but at those jobs, workers were taken advantage of. So the progressives tried to make work more humane, safer. Because of that increase in jobs, we have an increase in immigration. And what did they try to do, the progressives? They tried to make the transition to an American lifestyle easier. Programs such as Hull House that would help immigrants, women, uh, transition from let's say a rural or immigrant background to a more urban background. Those immigrants, because they're being taken advantage of in industrialization, will try to unionize, right? They'll unionize to get better working conditions. And then on top of that, those immigrants who are now coming to the city to live are living in squalor. They're living in tenements. They're living in places that don't have any standards. And so the progressives will try to make sure that there are garbage pickup, that homes have uh, air ventilation and natural light and a higher standard of living or hold landlords accountable. So those are the things, right? It's a cause and effect analysis, right? This happened during the Gilded Age, and this is what the progressives tried to do. There'll be a question on Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. Remember that W.E.B. Du Bois was a leader from the North and was advocating for the advancement of African American rights, both social equality and economic equality. Being from the North, he has a very, very different relationship to a lot of the issues that plague African Americans, right? Environment matters. Being from Massachusetts, the home of the Revolution, the home of the abolitionist movement, W.E.B. Du Bois was allowed to almost have a much uh, more aggressive style of leadership, whereas Booker T. Washington, coming from the South, was a little bit more accommodating, right? He just wanted more economic advancement for African Americans, right? Coming out of the labor movement, a labor movement that is seeing the white working class strike, try to unionize. His argument was if we present ourselves as good workers, we can get the jobs, and then we'll take that money and invest it into and invest it into our own communities. So know the difference in where they come from and how that influences their ideological movement for the African American civil rights advancement coming out of Plessy versus Ferguson, the ruling of separate but equal. So compare the two, right? This is also a compare and contrast essay. We have separate but equal. We have the very controversial ruling. We have African Americans advocating for advancement. We have two leaders emerge. One that's, let's say, accommodating, Booker T. Washington, and then we have one that's a little bit more aggressive. Write down each of their ideology, short bio on each of them, and then which one will you think was the most successful and why? So I'm asking for your opinion in that one as well. There'll also be a question on the women's movement coming from the 15th Amendment, right? Women were advocating to the radical Republicans like Susan B. Anthony to include them in the 15th Amendment. They're left out, but then we see the beginning of the women's suffrage movement, right? It's combined with industrialization. It's combined with the treatment of women in the domestic home. And women are advocating for advancement, education, and suffrage. Comes from the Wyoming area, the West, trying to give women the right to vote, to make women come out there to live. And then it kind of spreads to the east. The major issue being the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire during the Progressive Movement. That will get women into the streets for both the labor movement and the women's movement. So trace the trajectory. Who are the leaders? Margaret Sanger, Jeanette Rankin. Margaret Sanger was the advocate for birth control. Jeanette Rankin would be one of the first female Congress members. Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Stanton, write about these women, know a little bit about their background, and how post-Civil War to around 1945, we can surmise that Second World War, women will again enter the workforce, Rosie the Riveter, and we then get the next stage of the women's movement. There'll be a question on the colonies of Jamestown and Plymouth. We didn't do this one on the first exam, so no two key similarities and two key differences. Couple of similarities. They're both business ventures, right? Even though the Plymouth Puritans were looking for religious freedom, they are a business venture as well. They're both English. They're both Protestant-based, Protestant faith-based people. They are also the founding of the early American idea. What also is similar to them, right? There'll be, even though it's degree based, but there'll be some good relationship with Native Americans, but also there'll be conflict as well. Women will be kind of second-class citizens to both societies. The institution of slavery would exist in both North and South, more so in the South than in the North. And then explain major differences. One, Plymouth colony, for one, will come up with the Mayflower Compact, representative government, be much more of an egalitarian democratic society than the aristocratic South. Slavery will be the basis of the Southern economy, whereas religion will be at the center of the Plymouth colony. For one, environment will be very different. So find those differences. It's really harking back to that early first paper we did, right? It's just a callback to explaining some of the key similarities and explaining some of the key differences. And then there'll be one on the New Deal. Now, the New Deal programs are already listed in the short definition question. So pull the 3 R's: relief, recovery, reform, SEC, the Homeowners Loan Corporation, Wagner Act, Social Security. What was the New Deal during the Roosevelt administration trying to curb? For short definitions, like I said, it's going to be mostly made up of a lot of New Deal stuff. So go over the New Deal programs: Wagner Act, homeowners loan, the 3 R's of the New Deal, Glass-Steagall, Social Security, Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, no the amendments, 13, 14, 15, the Reconstruction Amendments, no the 20th, 19th, 21st Amendment. Brush up on some female leaders, Eleanor Roosevelt, Jeannette Rankin, Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Stanton. Use those women, Margaret Sanger, use those women from that are asked about in the short definition and the multiple choice, and write about them in the essay question. Familiarize yourself with the Treaty of Versailles, the German guilt clause, what ended the First World War. Familiarize yourself with the Harlem Renaissance, and the going back to the Federalists and Anti-Federalists. What was their argument? Brush up on the Spanish-American War, Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire, the Halley-Smoot Tariff, the great aspects of the Great Depression in terms of the world. What was the Agricultural Adjustment Act during the New Deal? Who were the muckrakers? And the famous court cases such as Dred Scott, Plessy versus Ferguson. Remind yourself about those. But really, like I said, this exam really focuses on post-American Civil War. So brush up on the Federalists and Anti-Federalists, the goals of Reconstruction, the amendments, what were the 4-izations of the Gilded Age and how that impacted the Progressive Era. Know what Jim Crow was, how Jim Crow leads us to Plessy versus Ferguson, and then how Plessy versus Ferguson ties into why Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois emerge as the leaders. Turn of the century, 20th century, America starts to become an imperialist power. What is imperialism versus anti-imperialism? How does yellow journalism stoke the war? What do we gain out of the Treaty of Paris? What territories? We received Guam, the Philippines, know what we got. Progressive era, right? Can social activism eliminating the problems caused by that industrialization, Gilded Age? So just redefine the problems of the Gilded Age and flip it on its head. Familiarize yourself with Margaret Sanger. Just brush up on the fact that she was a nurse and she was a main advocate of birth control and one of the future leaders of why we have the women's movement in the 1920s, and where women start to have much more of a greater role in society, much more of a personality, and a lot more independence. Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire, what did that do to the labor movement? We're going to brush up on World War I, the causes, militarism, imperialism, revolution, alliances, colonialism, and nationalism. What did not lead to the war? Just remember that one. Why America gets into the war, the sinking of the Lusitania, and then the Treaty of Versailles, right? And how the Treaty of Versailles is what the Germans will surrender to, right? And in that treaty, they have like many clauses blaming not the Serbians or the Austro-Hungarians for the cause of the war, which is the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, but Germany. Germany will be blamed, and that big one will be the German guilt clause, blaming Germany for the war, as well as a huge reparation sum that Germany owed the Allies, and that is going to destroy the German economy in the interwar period between the Great Depression and the Second World War. Jeannette Rankin and what her movement or role is in the women's movement, 19th Amendment, right? Suffrage for women, Roaring Twenties, right? What was the Harlem Renaissance? The Harlem Renaissance being this moment of African-American artistic rebirth in literature, music, jazz, art, writing, theater, etc. Know the Halley-Smoot Tariff, right? Stock market crash happens. Halley-Smoot Tariff was a goal to increase U.S. farmer protection against agricultural imports, but the increase added to the economic strain, right? A large outcry to the Halley-Smooth tariffs increased. It was a huge tariff on foreign countries to help American business, but it really hurt American business. So know what the Halley-Smooth tariff did. And then get to the New Deal. What was the New Deal? Public Works Administration, the federal government putting people to work. What was the 20th Amendment? What was the 21st Amendment? What are the 3 R's? Relief, recovery, reform, and write about them. Relief, feeding people. Recovery, medium-term goals, and reform, long-term. Unemployment, old age pension, minimum wage, Social Security. Know some of the acts. The WPA put nearly 9 million on public works projects such as buildings, schools, bridges, airports, putting people to work for the government. Infrastructure, federal arts program, actors, artists, musicians, and writers working for the federal government. The Wagner Act, right, allowing workers to organize and collectively bargain as a union against their against the owners of production. What is the Social Security Act? What is the Glass-Steagall Act? Know the outcomes of the New Deal, right? It lowers everything, but it doesn't really, unemployment doesn't reach pre-war numbers until the Second World War. This should be a little bit, sorry, this should be bold. Know the international response. What happened to the societies around the world with the Great Depression, right? America gets FDR. We kind of luck out. We refine our government or restructure our government to have the New Deal. But what does the world do? They regiment their societies. They close off and go insular. Nazi Germany, Italian fascism, Japanese militarism, the fact that the world would actually have dictators rise to powers in Spain, Italy, and Germany. Know who Eleanor Roosevelt is, know the goals of the New Deal, right? Know some aspects of Teddy Roosevelt. Like I said, I think we mentioned all this stuff before. This goes into it a little bit more. National Industrial Recovery Administration, AAA. Know what the AAA did, and Social Security. What was the goal of Social Security? What does Social Security do? So, just to reiterate, brush up on amendments, brush up on aspects of the New Deal, some major acts during the New Deal, SEC, for instance, Glass-Steagall, Social Security, homeowners loan insurance. Know the women's movement leaders, know what we got out of the Second Spanish-American War, know the causes of the First World War, what also the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire influenced, what is the philosophy of the New Deal, Great Depression on an international aspect, what were the muckrakers, right? We have journalism, yellow journalism, which was sensationalism in the Gilded Age, and then during the Progressive Era, muckrakers were the artists, were the photographers, writers who were uncovering to the public the ills of a modern society, showing people child labor in factories, showing people what Ida Tarbell was writing on U.S. Steel, or John D. Rockefeller's companies, how they actually conducted business, how ruthless they are. For essays, there'll be one on the Progressive Era and the Gilded Age. There'll be one on W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington, what were their ideologies, describe each leader. There'll be one on the women's movement, one on comparing Jamestown to Plymouth, and one on the Great Depression and New Deal goals. If you stick to those aspects, you will do fine. So go over this PDF. I made it a little bit shorter. I know somebody said 152 was so much. It's down to 89. It shouldn't take you too long. You'll have 2 hours to take the exam. The exam will be at 1 o'clock. I will see you there tomorrow. On that note, everybody, have a wonderful, wonderful day. Papers are due next Monday. Just study for the exam. Okay, everybody. On that note, take care.